2023 has come and gone. There have been countless incredible games released this year, and it is time once again for the Square Peg's Game of the Year countdown. That's right, me, little old me. I'm the entire voting body here. I've gone through every game I've played this year that is released in 2023, and I have whittled it down to be a top 10 list. That is a lie. There is an honorable mention section that I want to go over real quick, and the main reason this is here is because we've had a really good pile of remakes this year. Some absolutely spectacular remade games that released in 2023, and as much as I love them, I feel weird kind of putting them on this list against games that were built from the ground up, or at least were iterations on games that released previously. So here we are. These are my honorable mentions for games that probably would have been on the Game of the Year countdown if they weren't remakes and had that going against them. They're still spectacular, just I wanted to give the top 10 list to games that were fully innovated for the year 2023.
First up would be Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp. This was handled by WayForward. They're one of my favorite developers. It is from my favorite strategy series. I think the games are magnificent. I really hated how long this got delayed, but I'm glad it finally did get released because I was kind of at the point where I didn't think it was ever going to come out. Super Mario RPG is another great one. This is one I legitimately never thought we would ever see a remake of because, I mean, Square and Nintendo playing nice. I mean, yeah, they like each other, but this was a dual-owned property. I didn't think we'd actually ever see this released again, and to get a full remake with as high a quality as it received was really cool. The game is super fun. I really think it's fantastic. I know some people have said it's a little too easy, but for me, Super Mario RPG was never a terribly challenging game, so it feels right in line with what I experienced when I was younger. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe is magnificent. I was never a huge Kirby fan growing up, but over the last few years, something finally clicked for me with the character, and I've really enjoyed going back and playing the Kirby games. And this one is a remake of Return to Dreamland, and it's stunning. I really like kind of the stylistically cel-shaded aspects of the game. I think it looks really good. The gameplay is fun, and the overall content quality is great. Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection is my favorite Mega Man Legacy Collection. I love the Battle Network series. I think they're magnificent RPGs, and they're a nice kind of change of pace as far as typical Mega Man fare goes. Not that Mega Man is bad by any stretch of the imagination, but this was a creative way to keep the character kind of alive and give him some new legs back in the early 2000s, and the Battle Network games are great. And finally, I would be remiss to not mention the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters. This was an amazing collection that was released of Final Fantasies 1 through 6, featuring redone graphics, redone music. Everything looks fantastic. The gameplay is a signature Final Fantasy experience you've had in the past. It's just got a new fresh coat of paint, and the games are gorgeous. I love all of these games. On any other year, these probably would have been added to the top 10, but I don't know. Just like I said, for some reason this year, I just really wanted to go with original titles. So let's kick things off at number 10 with one of my favorite eShop games of the year. Now, before I get into the top 10, as always, this is an opinion piece, and you are free to disagree in any way, shape, or form that you want. This is just my opinion. If you want to let me know why I'm wrong, just the only thing I ask is you keep it respectful down in the comments. Up first for me this year is Crime O'Clock. Crime O'Clock is something I discovered, I want to say back midsummer, maybe July, June, something like that. And this was a game that I did not expect to really enjoy as much as I did. Like, I thought the premise was promising, but I thought it was going to be fairly limited and kind of, I guess, hokey in the grand scheme of things. But when I got into game, I was presented with a really immersive and really kind of thought-provoking point-and-click adventure where you didn't really have to worry about action or anything like that. It was just the power of your mind to try to figure out these different crimes, and using your powers of observation and your ability to look, reason, and figure things out to solve these different crimes throughout time. It's a really neat game where each environment you go to, you're going to have different time points that you're going to be able to jump to or from, and you're going to be able to move through the investigation to discover the ultimate crime that was committed at that time. It's an incredibly creative game and something that I've had a lot of fun with. I do think that maybe this is more suited for a PC, and there is a Steam release on this, so if you're interested in that, check it out there. But I have had a ton of fun with it on the Switch, and I do think it's a remarkable title. This was one that really captivated me from jump, and I just can't say enough good things about Crime O'Clock. This is one of my favorite games of the year and something I've had a lot of fun with. Coming in at number 9 is Street Fighter VI from Capcom. Now, I played this on my Xbox Series X, and I won't lie to you, I did not think, and that's kind of the running theme for a lot of games on this top 10 list, is I didn't think I was going to enjoy this one nearly as much as I did. I wasn't a huge fan of Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 5. I don't know why, they just didn't connect with me all that well, but Street Fighter 6 was something that the second I jumped into game, I saw kind of the brilliance behind it, and it felt like Capcom was making necessary changes to grow the brand and to make the brand more accessible to people. The gameplay is spectacular, as we would expect from Street Fighter, but it wasn't something where it was just kind of a rehash of every single Street Fighter game we've ever played. There were actually new combat methods that you could use and new control schemes you could use. Now, if you're an old school Street Fighter player, you still had all those button combos in play, and those were great, but you could also play it a little bit more simply, so everyone had access to a game. I thought the characters introduced in this game were memorable. I thought the graphics were stunning. The voice acting is wonderful. The music is fantastic. The environments are memorable, and everything is just really well done. And the story mode is great. I think the only thing I would really knock this for is that it does feel like a live service game to me because there are so many microtransactions in the game, which is a bit of a turnoff and is probably honestly why this kept it from going higher. But I do enjoy what I have played so far, and I think it is an incredibly balanced fighting game, which right out of the gate is very hard to do, and they nailed it from jump. I think Street Fighter 6 is wonderful. It's a fantastic fighter, and if you have a chance to play it, I urge you to check it out. In at number 8, and this might surprise some folks, is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. This is a game I love. I think it's fantastic. I think the gameplay is brilliant. I think the look is wonderful. The subtle music throughout the game is amazing, and it just adds to the overall atmospheric quality of the title. And I don't know how many people have pointed this out, but to me, as Hyrule has become more populated from Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom, the music has gotten a little more involved and become a little more robust as you play this game versus the original. And I thought that was a really nice, subtle touch to show that Hyrule is becoming more populated. My biggest problem with this game is that it's a lot of game. And now that's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. It's a wonderful problem to have. But in the 60 hours that I've played the title, I don't know how much I feel like I've accomplished. Like, I look at the map and I look at everything I still have to do, and there's still a ton to go. And that was kind of deflating to experience when I feel like I've done so much. And then I go in to look and see what my progress is, and it's like, oh, you haven't done anything, Jay. You've still got a million things to do. You've barely explored the depths. What are you doing? It's like a little bit deflating. And that's actually going to impact another game on this list later on down the road. But I know that's a problem just for me. And if Tears of the Kingdom is your number one game of the year, I can't argue that. It was really up in the running for me up until probably a couple of months ago when I kind of had this revelation that I wasn't getting as much done as I expected to. And that's okay. Like I said, this is all an opinion piece. And if your opinion's different than mine, that's totally fine. I still think it's a brilliant game. It's just the design of the game is something that knocks it down a bit for me. And that's both a good and a bad thing because I know I'm going to have years of gameplay to keep going with this title. It's just, as far as this year goes, it just doesn't quite get to the top. I really enjoy doing these top 10 lists at the end of the year where I'm able to suggest an independent game. And I've got 4 on my list this year, and that makes me so eternally happy. And this one here, Backpack Hero, is such a clever blending of genres. So this is essentially an RPG meets an inventory management simulation meets Tetris. And it just works. Like, it's so good. I have had countless hours of fun playing this game, just going through the different dungeons and finding the different objects and growing my backpack configuration and trying to maneuver and manipulate and store things in the right way to get the most bonuses. It's brilliant. It's so well designed, and it's so utterly charming with just incredible characters and beautiful pixel art. I can't help but recommend this one enough. I said when I first played this that this was probably in contention for my Game of the Year countdown, and it has consistently stayed in that list for me. I've had so much fun with Backpack Hero. I love the blending of genres. I think it's just a remarkable little title that does so much, so effortlessly well. And I say effortlessly, like this is some kind of miraculous game that just appeared out of nowhere. I'm sure this took years and years and years of development effort, and the finished product is something that is just magical to me. If I was better at Hi-Fi Rush, it would be higher on the list, but I am awful at this game, and it has nothing to do with the title. It's just that I have a poor rhythm naturally. I love this game. This is such a creative blending of genres that I would not expect it to work as nearly well as it does, but upon reflection, this is essentially Crypt of the Necrodancer, or Cadence of Hyrule, just in a 3D action environment and set to a rock rhythm as opposed to kind of a techno beat. It's brilliant. It's such a wonderfully designed game. with a beautiful look and just, man, do they crush it on the gameplay. So this was developed by Tango Gameworks, directed by John Johannes, and this is something that was originally conceived to kind of show off that Tango doesn't just do horror games, and holy moly did they crush it. This is Pop Rocks compared to kind of the oatmeal of what horror games is. I'm apparently hungry. I just adore this game. I think it's a fantastic title. It's a lot of fun to play. I urge you to check it out. It's available on PC and the Xbox Series consoles. I think it is a magnificent game, and more people need to play it because I think it got released and forgotten about really quickly. It's just amazing. I've talked about Aniline a bunch on the channel. I just mentioned it earlier in the week. I talked about it the month it released for my eShop Hidden Gems video, and I'm going to talk about it again because it's one of my favorite games of the year. I think it is a picture-perfect single-screen arcade game that absolutely captivated me and just made me stand up and take notice to what a perfect game experience it is. It's simple in scope. You are playing Pac-Man as a platformer. That's it. It's a steeplechase where you're collecting dots and collecting power-ups to eliminate the snakes that are trying to get you, but the further into the game you get, it introduces more and more elements that are nods to classic arcade games. The second level presents you with vines, so you climb them like you would in Donkey Kong Jr. The game gets more difficult. The snakes get more imaginative in the way they attack. They go through different doors and pop out in different areas of the map where you're at. It's just magical. The music in the game is fantastic. There's a bunch of different unlockables in the title, including the ability to play as Anton from Anton Blast and Anton Ball. And the gameplay is perfect. It's responsive. It's frustrating, like any good single-screen arcade game should be. But when you have the breakthrough, you feel like the best game player on the planet, only immediately to fall back to earth the next time you play. It's a magnificent game. It's one of my favorites of the year, and it is probably the best single-screen arcade game I've played since Donut Dodo. I was fully prepared to have Sea of Stars be one of my favorite games of the year, and that is usually a recipe for me to be set up for disappointment because it's something that I have built up and hyped up in my mind to be this incredible title. And inevitably stuff like that will disappoint, but Sea of Stars didn't. It delivered in every conceivable way. It is one of the best RPGs I have played all year. There's only one other RPG on this list that outranks it. It is stunning to look at. The music is magnificent. The characters are memorable. The writing is brilliant. It takes place in a world I adore. It's the same world as The Messenger from the same studio. It's just at a different time frame. The gameplay is imaginative. There are fun mini-games throughout, and it's just... it hits on every possible note. It could have been so easy for this game to skimp in certain areas or to avoid particular tropes because they wanted to be something different, but instead they leaned into what is ultimately a love letter to classic JRPGs like Final Fantasy and Chrono Trigger, and it hits on every possible level. This is my favorite independent title of the year. It is one of my favorite games of the year. I have put in countless hours playing it, and I think it is absolutely brilliant. You know, when a brand new Mario 2D adventure is in at number 3 on a top 10 list, you have had an absolute murderer's row of quality this year. Super Mario Wonder is so brilliantly done. It is such a wonderful kind of breath of fresh air for the Mario franchise. Now, don't get me wrong, I love 3D Mario adventures, but my bread and butter is always going to be a 2D Mario game. And I was kind of concerned about Mario Wonder. I mean, sure, there was the whole thing about Charles Martinet no longer being the voice. The talking flowers kind of got on my nerves in the trailers, but the gameplay itself just works. It's fantastic. I enjoy it from top to bottom. I will admit I'm not the biggest fan of the elephant power-up, but I don't have any major complaints. Like, that's the biggest complaint I have is a power-up, and that's being nitpicky at best. Like, at best. Like, it's legitimately me looking for a fault in a title. I think it's incredibly well balanced. I think the levels are imaginative. I think the ability to look for those wonder seeds in each level, and each of them offering a new and unique challenge in almost every single level, is just the epitome of creativity and such a brilliantly done execution of what could have been a stale and tired formula. It works. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is fantastic. Up until about a month ago, this was number 1 on my list. This is Baldur's Gate 3 from Larian Studios. To say this is an achievement would be an understatement. This is one of the most memorable RPGs, one of the most memorable exercises in using the Dungeons & Dragons license to create something magical and impressive and fantastical, and just the picture-perfect epitome of what a long D&D campaign should be. Everything works in this game. The characters are memorable. Character creation is so ridiculously detailed, like down to levels that you don't really need to detail, but you kind of need to detail when you're going to this kind of degree. The gameplay is fantastic. The look of the game, the design of the game, the voice acting, the sound, the writing, nothing misses. My biggest complaint, and this is what I was referencing in my Tears of the Kingdom review, my biggest complaint about this game is that it is a lot of game. And as someone who regularly rolls up D&D characters and always tries new creations for a character, I fell into the trap of starting this game over countless times because it was like, oh, I don't quite like the way that my ranger's playing. I wanted to play this character a little bit different, so I would start again. And every single time I would start, it would be going through and just this massive, massive, massive world to kind of explore again. And again, while that is a fantastic problem to have, it's something where I look at it now, having hundreds of hours into the game, and I feel like I don't have enough accomplished. What can I say? Analysis paralysis is real. It's something where I got stuck looking at options, trying to figure out what I wanted to play and trying something new. And that's a good problem to have, but it's also something that weighed on me as I was playing. Now, that is 100% self-inflicted, and if this is your game of the year, like I said, this was my game of the year up until about a month ago, and I have no arguments with that whatsoever. It's a brilliant title, but there was one for me that was just a little bit better. And if you've been following the channel this month, you probably figured out what my game of the year is. And for me, it is the absolutely brilliant Spider-Man 2 from Insomniac Games. Now, this is 2 years in a row where Insomniac has had my game of the year. Last year it was Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. This year, it's Spider-Man 2, and there's a lot of reasons for it. First off, the game balances perfectly. It's a fantastic title. Now, a lot of folks have complained that it feels rushed in places, and I didn't really get that experience because, to me, it was world building. It was setting up for sequels and setting up for downloadable content, which is, to some people, that's reprehensible, but for me, that's just adding to a story, so it doesn't really bother me. I come from a serialized background. I love comics. This feels like a comic book storyline setup. This is kind of setting things up for the Venom saga in the original Spider-Man run. This was kind of the introduction of the Black Costume in Secret Wars. And it works. The storyline is magnificent. You get incredible character beats from both Peter and Miles, as well as Harry, as well as Mary Jane, and Martin Lee. Martin Lee has my favorite character arc in the entire series so far. For someone I loathed in the first Spider-Man game and loathed in Miles Morales, there are character developments in this game that just make me adore Martin Lee as a character. The gameplay is memorable. It perfects what we were introduced to in the original Spider-Man and in Miles Morales, and expands on what we were introduced to in the Arkham games by taking that kind of quasi-rhythm-based gameplay and just plussing it and making it better. The design of the game is brilliant. Manhattan is still a ton of fun to swing around. It is one of the most relaxing games that I have ever played by just being able to swing around New York City. The collectibles to find, the unlockables, the different suits, the skills, the abilities, the gadgets, even the Mary Jane levels. Like, the weirdest parts of the games for Spider-Man are the Mary Jane levels, the weird Mary Jane stealth levels, and they still work. They're still fun. I love everything about this game. There's nothing that has happened in this game that does not work for me. I am excited for future DLC. I'm excited for sequels. I am excited, desperately excited for the Wolverine game whenever that ends up releasing. Spider-Man 2 is brilliant.
This was a really, really difficult top 10 list because the top 3 is kind of a murderer's row of quality, right? Like, you've got Baldur's Gate, which was just kind of earth-shatteringly incredible and one of the deepest and most diverse and rich RPGs I've ever played. You had Super Mario Wonder, which is a return to form for classic 2D Mario adventures. And you had what ended up being my game of the year, which a month and a half ago when I started making this list, when I first played it, was probably number 10, but the storyline propelled it to the top, and that is, of course, Spider-Man 2. I don't think you can go wrong with any of these. These really could have been all tied for first place. It really just depends on what your mood is, and it kind of depended on where I was at when I recorded this video. And as of the recording of this video on December 26th, Spider-Man 2 elevates to number 1. There are certain story beats in that game that just weren't eclipsed by any other game this year, and it takes a lot for a game to really impact me emotionally. And over the last year, I've lost family members, and this game kind of dealing with the guilt of trying to move on with your life and kind of processing that emotionally is a big deal. And it was a revelatory game, and I think it's a revelatory experience. It's something that Insomniac should be proud of, and Sony should be incredibly proud of, because it's just a remarkable title. But that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are, and if Baldur's Gate 3 is your number 1, or Mario Wonder is your number 1, I can't fault you. At any time over the last month and a half, both of those games have been in first place, as I've kind of been fiddling and tweaking and working with things here. Those have both been in first place, but as it shook out, and this could just be a recency bias, Spider-Man 2 gets to be number 1. Like I said, let me know in the comments down below what your game of the year is. I would love to hear from you. Keep it respectful, keep it peaceful, keep it happy. I'm not going to be back until next year on January 2nd with a full long-form video. So I say to you, Happy New Year, be well, stay safe, and remember to play more games, stay square, and take care. I'll talk to you soon.